Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Sasuke accidentally killed Sakura and traveled back in time? Part 1. He watched as his home was being destroyed right before his very eyes. The village was in flames and piles of rubble were everywhere. Ear-piercing screams was another sound you could hear amidst all the shouts. Smoke filled up the air as both ninja civilian ran for their lives, though majority of the ninja were fighting. The other ninjas were getting the civilians to safety. The village had been attacked by a large army of white Zetsus. The Akatsuki had decided that since Konoha housed most of the strongest ninjas in all 5 elemental nations, if they destroyed the Hidden Leaf village first, then the entire allied shinobi forces would be handicapped to a greater extent. A kunai flew past him and he barely dodged as another Zetsu came from nowhere and launched itself towards him. He went through a single-handed sign and a large flame absorbed the clone, entirely turning to ashes before it hit the ground. He narrowed his eyes at the now ashes white Zetsu before a Chunin identified as Tanaka landed beside him. Uchiha-san, Hokage-sama requires your presence at the tower now, he said, anxiety and tension barely invisible on his scarred face. Sasuke nodded for a sec before taking off towards the tower. He had left his village at 12 on a quest for power. He severed all his bonds with his teammates. Indeed, he had found power from Orochimaru, but he didn't intend to stay with him forever. At 15, he met his team again with a new person in his place. Sai was it. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy at the thought of being replaced. Didn't they say they'd never leave him nor replace him? At 16, he betrayed his master and killed him, then set off to kill Itachi. And he did kill Itachi and was gifted with the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Amaterasu and Susanoo, and lost the curse mark as well and many other jutsus, only to discover that his older brother had been the good guy and had played a double agent for both the Uchiha clan and the village. He then hunted down Danzo and killed the bastard. He was the one who persuaded the council to order the death of the entire clan. After that, he sabotaged the 5-cage summit only to turn himself in. If Itachi died protecting the Leaf Village, then he could honor his brother's death by protecting his legacy. He was sentenced to only a month in prison, because he was pardoned of his sins since he turned himself in, and plus he was a very valuable asset in the war and the cages would be very dumb to keep him in prison during the war. His reunion with his teammates had been awkward and fine still. Naruto was the same as always, joking and walking around like everything in the whole world was fine and there wasn't an upcoming war. Yep. Typical Naruto. Kakashi had been the same as back then, but he always noticed the flash of guilt that crossed his lone eye every now and then. Sai had been very withdrawn. He guessed the guy hated his guts since he had left such good people like Team 7. He didn't care how the rest of the Rookie 9 felt about him. He didn't care whether or not they forgave him. Sakura had been the one who amazed him the most. He had expected her to coming running to him, saying, Sasuke-kun, in her sugar-coated voice and hug him and act like he had never left in the first place. But he received none of that. She only looked at him before shrugging nonchalantly. That shocked him. Did that mean her feelings for him had died? It was good to know that she had changed and wasn't that damsel in distress, fangirl ninja he always saved. Now she was Sakura Haruno, the best medic ninja in the whole world and possessed monstrous strength. He couldn't help but miss the old Sakura. It was when he caught her staring at him during one of their lunches at Ichiraku's. She had turned a deep shade of red and looked like a deer caught in the headlights before looking back to her plate. After that, during the entire conversation, she was very quiet. That was new, he had thought. He was curious as to why she did that. After a few investigations, which pretty much involved putting Ino into a genjutsu and going through her mind, that he came across a conversation of the two girls, in which the pink-haired medic had resignedly admitted that after all the pain the Uchiha had put her through, she was still in love with him. He immediately broke the genjutsu and shunshined away before the blonde could recollect herself. He ran into Naruto and demanded they spar a bit, which clearly meant a 3 hours worth fight. He couldn't tell how he felt as he dodged the blonde's attacks and returned his own. Happy, delighted, devastated, angry at himself for putting her through so much pain, angry at her to still love him after all that he'd done to her. But all in all, he was satisfied. He'd beaten up the blonde to a less bloody pulp and walked away without saying anything. Sayonara, Tem, the blonde had shouted after him. Ever since, his gaze would linger on her for a few seconds before turning to glare at something. Sakura didn't seem to notice. It's not like he expected since the girl was obviously oblivious to his way of showing affection. Anyways, the Hidden Leaf Village had been attacked 6 months after he returned. It was unexpected, really. Most ninja had moved to the Allied Shinobi Forces HQ, which meant there were few ninja in the village. It just so happened that the Rookie 9 and Team Guy were in the village, and the Godime Hokage of course. Halting before the tower, his thought process came to a stop. He inhaled then exhaled and entered the tower, which had remained intact even after the attack. He walked up to the Hokages with long, quick strides. He stopped in front of the door and was told to come in before he could even knock on the door. He entered and bowed before the blonde woman's desk as he addressed her. "You called for me, Hokage-sama," he said stoically. "Yes. I need you to go to Western Gate. That's where the leader of the invasion is. If you manage to stop him, you would have helped us a great deal. I specifically ask for your help because of your Sharingan. Are you able to do the mission?" she said. He nodded briefly in understanding. "Good. You may take your leave." With that, he left the tower in a blur. He arrived at the gate to find 3 dozens of Naruto clones fighting off the Zetsus. The original Naruto was fighting 10 Zetsus at once, using his Rasenshuriken to take them down. "Sasuke," the blonde said as the raven-haired ninja laned beside him. "Naruto," he said in reply. A dozen Zetsus lunged towards the 2 boys. Sasuke unsheathed his katana and slashed at 2 Zetsus. Soon after, the Chidori sparked to life and he struck 3 of the Zetsus. Naruto used Rasengan on the remaining clones. They both stared at their handiwork with pride. "Where's Sak?" But before he could finish his sentence, a loud rumble echoed and the earth quaked. "That must be her," Naruto said. "Go to her. I'll take care of things here," the blonde said. The Uchiha nodded his thanks and took off towards the eastern gate where the sound came from. He arrived after a few minutes. He found her panting heavily, with rubble everywhere and dozens of Zetsus sprawled on the ground unconscious. Most probably from the chakra-infused punch. She was covered in cuts and bruises and there was one ugly cut that ran from her left shoulder down to her abdomen. It was bleeding profusely. He was beside her in an instant. "Sakura," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the cut. "Sasuke-kun," she acknowledged his presence before turning to look at her enemy. They had been involved in a deadly taijutsu battle, in which she had earned her scar. Her pink hair was stuck to her forehead because of sweat and her attire in bad condition. My, if it isn't Sasuke. What a pleasant surprise," the masked man said in fake delight. "Madara," he growled through clenched teeth as he tore his gaze away from Sakura and glared at the Sharingan wielder. "Aren't you happy to see the man who told you the truth about your brother?" he said. "What are you doing here?" he spat, ignoring the statement and Sakura's questioning gaze. "That was a story for another day. I'm here to destroy Konoha, that's why," the masked man replied in his feel voice. "I won't let you," Sasuke replied, images of his brother during his last moments flashing across his mind. He was going to protect his brother's legacy. Before Madara could retort, Sasuke was already beside him, katana unsheathed and slashing towards his throat. Madara jumped away before the sword landed on his throat. He took out his kunai and charged towards Sasuke. Metal clashed against metal and sparks of electricity flew as the two Uchihas were involved in a deadly battle of Kenjutsu. Both of them had their Sharingans activated. Sasuke slashed his sword again, but the sword passed through. He received a kick to the stomach and flew a few meters away. He wiped away the blood that leaked from his mouth. Sakura was beside him in a second. "Are you okay?" she asked. Her forehead creased in concern as she helped him sit up. "I'm fine," he said nonchalantly. "Let me check you," she insisted as her chakra-infused hand hovered across his face. "I said I'm fine," he said harshly, hoping to brush her off, but she persisted. Persistence, one of the things he loved and hated about her. His eyes softened. "Sakura," he drawled. The way he said her name made her shiver in pleasure and almost forget that they were amidst a war and were facing the deadliest man on earth. She looked at him determinedly before sighing in defeat. Madara watched the two in amusement as a plan began to formulate in his already corrupt mind. Sasuke stood up and glared at the Uchiha before charging toward him yet again. Madara dodged his attacks and countered them with his own. Metal against metal, taijutsu against taijutsu, and ninjutsu against ninjutsu. Madara looked at Sasuke as the panting boy tried to regain his composure after receiving an uppercut. He smirked underneath his mask and charged. Instead of charging towards Sasuke, he went straight towards Sakura. Sakura braced herself and deflected his punch easily. The two began to fight in taijutsu. Sakura and Sasuke's eyes connected briefly and they nodded in understanding. Sakura charged towards Madara with her fist back. He easily dodged. He turned to see Sasuke beside him, Chidori ready and poised towards his chest. Madara didn't move as he stared at Sasuke. Why isn't he moving? Sasuke thought as the Chidori aimed for his chest. He saw a strange glint in Madara's eyes. Before he could on what the look meant, he saw Sakura behind Madara, aiming a punch at him. His eyes widened in grieving realization as the Chidori passed through Madara and went straight for Sakura. He caught the briefest laughing look in Madara as Sasuke's own Chidori passed into the chest of the girl he loved the most. Sakura, shocked and paralyzed, coughed up blood. They hadn't put into consideration that the bloody bastard could pass through objects. Madara shunshined a safe distance away from the two and watched them bemusedly. Sakura dropped to the ground as she coughed up more blood. "Sakura!" Sasuke exclaimed, panic heavy in his voice as he crouched beside her. He gently put her head on his lap. "Sakura! Sakura! Talk to me. I'm so sorry," he apologized as he shook her quickly but gently. Sakura's eyes glazed over as she looked at the boy. For the first time, he saw how the hospital work had taken toll on her body. Her eyes were unusually dull and had rings underneath. Apart from being involved in a battle, she looked very tired. Her skin was pale and lacked the usual glow. Lines had creased on her forehead, probably from the hospital and chakra exhaustion. He badly wanted to ease away those lines with a gentle massage. Blood was everywhere, her blood. His stomach twisted and spun with guilt as he watched the dying girl. "I'm sorry, for being so reckless," she sputtered before going limp in his arms. No, 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 no. She couldn't die. She was his source of sunshine, his life. She made him feel more human rather than a traitor, monster. He checked her pulse to find nothing. He couldn't believe this. Sakura Haruno, the girl who would give her life for his, who loved him endlessly, whom he knew could never live without, had died by his own hands. Something snapped within him. The same feeling when he discovered the truth about Itachi. "She's gone, boy. She was never useful anyway," Madara said from where he stood. Sasuke gently lay her down, standing up and wiping away the tears which were threatening to fall. His expression was one of pure hatred and fury. "You're going to regret you ever laid your eyes on Sakura. I'm gonna kill you, bastard," he shouted as he lunged towards the masked man with new speed. Madara, Seeing that the boy had reached another level which could ultimately kill him, thought of a new plan. He began going through the set of hand signs. Sasuke, having read the signs using his Sharingan, growled in rage. What's he doing? He thought at the unfamiliar signs. It's like doing Kamui, but Kamui doesn't need hand signs, he thought. Whatever it is, I have to stop it, he said to himself inwardly. Just before Madara finished the last sign, Sasuke did a tiger sign. He didn't know why and pushed away Madara's left hand which had a ram sign, putting his fingers to finish whatever jutsu he was doing. Imbecile. He heard Madara snarl before everything was engulfed in a blinding white. I was just sitting in the kitchen, reading Sasuke and Sakura's relationship on Quora when I thought I should write a Naruto fanfic, like seriously. It has passed my mind for like the third time, this type of fanfiction. So it's my first time. I've always wanted to write this type of fanfic. I do hope you like it. Anyway, grammatical errors are mine. Read and review. Tunana. Wind slashed at his face, slashed at every part of his exposed skin. He felt himself falling through the air. He opened his eyes to find himself a good 5 kilometers in air. He looked below and saw trees, trees and trees. Probably the Hidden Leaf Village, he thought as he recognized his home's terrain. The last thing he remembered was finishing Madara's jutsu before everything turned white. He noticed that he was losing altitude quickly. He summoned his hawk which caught him before he fell 2,000 meters. The bird slowly lowered itself to the ground. He dismissed it as he thought of conserving his chakra as best as he could. He looked around and all he could see was green. Where am I? He thought as he scanned his surroundings. Extending his chakra senses as best as he could, he tried to locate anyone nearby. He found Kakashi's chakra signature and few other Chunins 5 kilometers east. Kakashi, he said to himself. I've got to warn him of Madara, he thought as he sped towards the group. The last time he'd seen the gray-haired Junin was when he left for war. That had been soon after the 5-cage summit. 5 minutes later, he found himself face to face with Kakashi's group. He had a team of 3 Chunin, 2 boys and a girl. Kakashi, he began, forgetting to put the sensei honorific. Madara is coming, and the village is under attack. We need to go now, he said, trying to control his growing anger. Kakashi looked at him as though he'd said something clearly stupid. What are you talking about, Sasuke? The village is not under attack, he replied in his usual lazy drawl. It is. I was fighting Madara not just long ago. And Sakura, he sputtered as he said her name, her last moments cutting through his vision. He closed his eyes as though trying to ease the almost physical pain that was beginning to settle at the bottom of his stomach. Sasuke. Madara died a long time ago. How could you possibly fight him? Let alone you're a genin, the Junin pointed out. Genin. The Uchiha thought. Sasuke looked down at himself and it took all his willpower to prevent his jaw from falling. He'd expected to see his usual black shirt, black ninja pants and black cloak. Suddenly, he felt funny. He felt as though a large part of him had been removed. He was dressed in his genin outfit which consisted of white shorts, a blue high-collared shirt with the Uchiha crest and white arm warmers. He was covered in a fine layer of dirt. He was going to check on his change later. Let's go back to the village and see if what you're saying is true, nay. Kakashi suggested. He shrugged nonchalantly. Sasuke arrived at the gates to find everything perfectly fine. What the? He thought, successfully managing to hide his shock. The village, which had only been a pile of rubble just a few minutes ago, was back together in one piece. But how? Why? When? It didn't make sense. What kind of dirty game are you playing, Madara? He thought darkly as he glared at God knows where. See, Sasuke. There isn't any Madara. And the village is certainly not under attack, Kakashi replied smugly. Sasuke, HNED, before stalking off. This kid has got some serious mood swings, he thought as he stared at the retreating figure of his student before going back to giving instructions to the Chunin whom the brooding Uchiha had scared the living daylights out of. Sasuke took each and every detail of Konoha. Everyone seemed perfectly fine. There wasn't any fire nor blood. No fleeing of both civilian and ninjas, no thousands and thousands of Zetsus causing havoc in his brother's legacy. The atmosphere was peaceful instead of intense and full of fear and anguish. Everyone acted as though everything was alright and there were no signs or traces of an invasion whatsoever. What is going on here? Is this some kind of genjutsu? He thought as he continued scanning the village. He abruptly stopped and did a Kai sign. Kai, he repeated. Nothing happened. Kai, Kai, Kai. He chanted as though it were a mantra. Still nothing happened. If it's not a genjutsu, then what is it? He thought before bumping into a familiar blonde. Oh hey, bastard. Didn't see you there since you're such a loser, Naruto said as he taunted the Uchiha. If I'm a loser then at least I'm something. You don't even exist, he replied in his usual cold tone. What was that bastard? I'm gonna become Hokage and everyone's going to know my name, Dadbao. The blonde exclaimed loudly. Sasuke studied his best friend slowly. He seemed like he always was. Cheerful, ever-smiling, hyperactive, acting as though there wasn't a care in the world and a glowing ball of energy and enthusiasm. Nay, Sasuke-tem, why are you looking at me like the way I look at Sakura-chan? The Uzumaki boy said as he narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Follow me, Sasuke said as he ignored the blonde's previous statement and began walking towards the training grounds where he would find teammates Junin-sensei and Genjutsu specialist Kurenai. Hey, wait up! Naruto shouted after the Uchiha as he scrambled to reach him. You're asking about a genjutsu which looks like you've traveled back in time. Kurenai repeated the question. His eyes twitched in annoyance and he fought back a snappy retort of, I just said so. He nodded. She held her chin in deep thought. I've never come across such a genjutsu, she said in deep thought. Sasuke frowned deeply. If it isn't a genjutsu then what is it? He asked himself. However, she trailed absent-mindedly. What is it? The Uchiha boy asked. I don't know if it's actually possible, she said. There's the Izanami and Izanagi, she said. You mean that old myth about gods? Naruto was cut short with a smack to the back of his head. No, not that one, Kurenai said as she chuckled at his childish antics. They are genjutsus performed by a Sharingan user. Izanagi is based on the creation of all things technique, used by the sage of six paths to turn imagination into reality. The process is explained to use spiritual energy, which forms the basis of yin release, to create shape from nothingness. With Izanagi, the user applies an illusion to reality itself, giving the user control over what is and is not real for as long as Izanagi is active. Users typically do this in order to protect themselves, negating any injuries they receive or even their deaths. However, you can only cast that type of genjutsu if you have both Uchiha and Senju blood within you, she explained. Wow, that's so cool, Naruto exclaimed gleefully. I wish I had the Sharingan. Then I could change everything. I would make Sakura-chan my girlfriend, Sasuke-tem would be my right-hand man, I'd be Hokage, everyone would eat ramen as the staple food, he was elbowed by Sasuke. But it only lasts for a few seconds, maybe a minute. Plus after using it, you'd go blind and lose your Sharingan, she added. TCH. What a lame genjutsu. I wouldn't want to lose my Sharingan, the blonde replied. What about the Izanami? Sasuke asked. Izanami is a genjutsu which affects the target through physical sensations shared between them and the user to perform the illusion. Like Izanagi, in exchange for the temporary ability that it grants the user, the Sharingan with which Izanami is cast is rendered blind and loses its light forever. According to the books, this technique and Izanagi form a pair, but unlike the latter, which is a technique capable of altering destiny, Izanami is instead one that decides it. The user must then intentionally replicate the same sensation and in the same way, memorize that instant with their Sharingan, and those sensations will also be used when Izanami is activated. There was a point in time where members of the Uchiha clan abused the abilities granted by Izanagi, instead simply casting the technique as a means of escaping the undesirable results of their actions. Whilst this resulted in little issue if only one person were using Izanagi, if there were two or more casters, they would begin to fight amongst each other over personally favorable outcomes. Thus, as dojutsu users were unlikely to succumb to ocular genjutsu, Izanami was created as a method to reprimand such clansmen, as well as save them from their own arrogance. By imprisoning them within an unalterable loop of events, the victim was forced to accept the reality they had created if they ever wished to escape the illusion. However, because of the dangers involved in using a technique with a built-in escape route in a real battle, Izanami became classed as a kinjutsu as well as Izanagi. As such, Izanami is ironically not a genjutsu to be used on an enemy, but on a friend who has lost their way as a means of helping them find themselves again, she finished. But I don't know if anyone actually used those techniques. The only person I knew was Madara Uchiha, but he died at least a century ago, the red-eyed beauty said. Sasuke nodded in understanding. Do those genjutsus need hand signs? He asked. No. Merely having eye contact with the Sharingan is all, she said with a shrug. AAA, the boy said. Thank you for your time, he said before walking away. Thanks Kurenai-sensei. The blonde shouted as he ran after his teammate. Kurenai chuckled. I wonder why he asking. She said to herself. Sasuke-tem, I'm hungry. Let's go to Ichiraku's, the blonde suggested. The Uchiha grunted. I'll take that as a yes, he said as he dragged the Sharingan wielder to the ramen stand. They arrived to find Kakashi there. Sensei, what brings you here? The blonde said as they sat on either sides of the Junin. Nothing much. Just trying to find a quiet place to read my book, he said as he raised his Ika Makeout Paradise. I'm gonna have lunch with the Tem, Naruto said. And he's paying, he said as he finished placing their orders. Sensei, is it possible for a time travel jutsu? Sasuke asked. A time travel jutsu, I've never come across one, the lone-eyed ninja replied. What about shifting through dimensions? Sasuke asked as he thought of Kamui. Yes. There's Kamui, he confirmed. Do you need hand signs for it? He asked again. No, but I think are some jutsus similar to Kamui which need hand signs. But I don't know any. That information is stored at the Uchiha library. There are some scrolls, but Kakashi never got to finish his sentence as his student was sprinting toward the Uchiha district. He shook his head as he thought of his cute little student before going back to read his book. Sasuke, who's gonna pay for your bowl? The blonde shouted after his teammate. But of course, Sasuke either chose to ignore him or just didn't hear. The latter seemed more appropriate. He arrived at the Uchiha district and went straight to the Uchiha Naka shrine. Those scrolls couldn't obviously be kept in the normal library. They had to be at the shrine where the clan's secrets were kept. He walked around until he found the place he was looking for. The library at the shrine was very big. He eyed the endless piles of scrolls stocked in the shelves. He grunted, which was translated to, this is going to be tiring. He walked to the nearest shelf and took out a lot of scrolls. He walked over to the nearby large desk and began reading through the scrolls one by one. After 6 hours of continuous reading, the Uchiha decided to take a break. He had not yet come across what he was looking for and he was beginning to tire out. He looked again at the countless shelves for the umpteenth time. Maybe I should just leave it be, he thought tiredly. Then a vision of a bleeding Sakura in his arms flashed. No, he was not going to give up. He had to keep searching. The answer was there, he just had to look underneath the underneath. He smirked a little as he thought of one of his sensei's favorite phrases. He didn't want history to repeat itself, so he had to keep searching. Just as he started to read another scroll, his stomach growled loudly. Maybe he needed to eat before continuing. Sasuke walked in the streets of Konoha holding a plastic bag, hands shoved in his pockets. He had recently bought tomatoes, sushi and ramen. He didn't intend on buying actual food. He just needed something to ease his hungry stomach. Just as he turned to go towards the Uchiha district, he felt a heavy weight descend upon him. Sidestepping at the last second, he saw Naruto land where he'd previously been. "Ah, Tem. How'd you know?" the blonde said as he pouted. "I could hear you 1,000 miles away since you're so loud," the Uchiha replied smoothly. Naruto pouted childishly. He peered over to see the Uchiha holding a plastic bag. "Ooh, what's in there?" he spoke as he struggled to get a peek. "Nothing that concerns you," he said. "Don't be such a meanie, Sasuke Tem," Naruto complained. The raven-haired boy all but grunted. Before Naruto could further persuade the Uchiha, a high-pitched squeal of, "Sasuke-kun," interrupted them. As soon as that happened, Sasuke found one of the most annoying blondes in the world clinging onto his arm like his skin. "Hey Ino, can't you see that I was talking to the Tem?" Naruto shouted at the kunoichi, but his words fell to the ground. "Sasuke-kun," Ino purred. It took all his willpower to not drive his Chidori into her. "Get off," he spat as he glared at her. "But Sasuke-kun," Ino tried to whine in a seductive voice. "Get off him. I'm still talking to Sasuke Tem." Naruto cried but was ignored for the fourth time. "How troublesome," a lazy voice. The trio turned their attention to Shikamaru and Choji, who had just arrived. "Hey there," Choji greeted in between a mouthful of potato chips. "Hey guys. Can you get the bimbo fool off of Sasuke?" Naruto whispered, but the comment didn't go unheard by Ino. "Hey, who are you calling a bimbo doll?" the girl screeched as her grip loosened. Sasuke shrugged Ino's hand off him. Nothing," Naruto blurted as he waved his hands frantically. He didn't wanna have another episode of having to face Sakura's runner-up in temper. "Hey Sasuke. Sorry if Ino is bothering you," Shikamaru said without a hint of apology. The Uchiha replied. "Where are you guys going?" Naruto asked the members of Team 10. "We're on our way to Ichiraku's," Choji replied as he munched happily. "Ichiraku's? Why didn't you say so?" the Uzumaki boy shouted gleefully. "Come on Tem. Let's go," Naruto said as he dragged the Uchiha towards the place for the second time that day before he could oblige. "Yay. Dinner with Sasuke-kun," Ino squealed as she punched the air victoriously, which somehow landed on Shikamaru. When he didn't receive an apology, he muttered something about troublesome women. The five ninjas sat as they ate the ramen. Naruto had already downed 2 bowls before any of them reached half. "So what are you doing these days?" Shikamaru asked as he decided to strike a conversation with the Uchiha, which earned him a glare from Ino. Sasuke pondered on how to answer the Nara. They were known to be the smartest people on Earth, though he knew that Sakura was above all of them in intelligence but never bothered to invest in that area. If he could ask him about the possibility of the time travel jutsu, then maybe he might dig up some valuable information. "I'm researching on the possibility of a time travel jutsu," the Uchiha replied as he slurped on his ramen. Time travel jutsu huh? He said as twiddled with his noodles. "I heard about that stuff, but they're classified as kenjutsu," the Nara said. "What do you know?" Sasuke asked, curiosity vivid in his eyes. "I heard my old man talk about it. Says there are jutsus such like Kamui is one of them, but instead you go to a different dimension. But he said there's one type of Kamui which needs hand signs that can make you travel anywhere, even back in time," Shikamaru said. "Do you know anything about it?" the raven-haired boy asked. All I know is that the scrolls are at the Uchiha library in the Naka shrine, Shikamaru concluded. Sasuke held his chin in deep thought before beforening. Guess he had to keep searching. Sasuke was on the second batch of scrolls. Each batch had about 100 scrolls. This is getting troublesome, he quoted Shikamaru's trademark phrase as he massaged the bridge of his nose. He stood and he walked to another section of the library. He tried to take a scroll but felt fatigue wash over him. He wavered a little and supported himself by leaning on the shelf. Just then his eyes caught a scroll with the Mangekyo Sharingan on the seal. He looked at it questionably and decided to check it out. He took the scroll and walked over to the desk. He sat down and started to open it. But the seal wouldn't budge. He examined it closely. Maybe it needs a Sharingan, he mumbled as he inspected it. He activated his Sharingan and tried to open it, but the seal held. Since the seal has the Mangekyo Sharingan, then maybe I should use it, he thought. Then it struck him. Even after going back in time, did he still have his abilities as before, or should he say after? He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and was beyond relieved to still have it in possession. Then he opened the scroll. He began going through the contents and thanked the Lord he found exactly what he was looking for. The just you which he helped Madara complete was the reverse time jutsu or Raibasutemu no Jutsu. It allowed the user to go back or forward in time. Depending on the amount of chakra, the user could go to a certain number of years, the maximum being 3 years back or forward. It needed set of hand signs which were quite difficult to do. The user must be a Mangekyo Sharingan wielder. If the user went back in the past, then the events would play as before, however they would be changed if the user decided to interfere in the events. If the user went to the future, then he would see what would happen if events were to play themselves accordingly. His eyes moved to the hand signs. They were exactly as Madara had done, but the last hand sign was a ram. He remembered how he'd put his own tiger hand sign in place of Madara's. The just you which Madara would have performed would send his at least 2 minutes back in time. He wondered why Madara would do so. He guessed that his amount of chakra, Mangekyo Sharingan and hand sign decided to send him back 3 years back in time. Then suddenly, something popped in his mind. If he was sent back in time, then was Madara also sent back in time? His question was answered. A loud bang echoed in the room, bringing him out of his reverie. Just that, he saw a shadow blur past him towards the exit. He followed the mysterious figure using his speed out of the shrine. But it was nowhere in sight. Then he saw it standing on top of an electrical pole. "Who are you?" he asked the mysterious person. When he got no answer, he readied himself to attack. In the briefest moment, the person was gone. But the Mangekyo Sharingan spinning on the figure's covered face did not go unnoticed by the Uchiha. He stared at the place where the figure had been, multitude of questions running in his mind. Sasuke sat in his room. He thought what he should do now. He had a full understanding of what had happened. He had enough chakra to go back to the future and things would be back to normal. But what about Sakura? She was dead, he'd killed her. His gut clenched horribly at the thought. If he stayed, he could change some events and things would be better, maybe save Sakura. With his mind set, he began to formulate a plan on what he would do next. The next morning, he woke up late. After spending the entire night perfecting his master plan, he was very tired. He woke up feeling very fresher. He took a bath and changed into his training gear, which consisted of a black high-collared jumpsuit with the Uchiha crest on the back. Don't forget the Uchiha crest. He went to the training grounds and began to test his abilities. After sparring for 2 hours with his shadow clone, he discovered he had retained most, if not all of his justice, even the Susanoo and Amaterasu. And boy was he happy. He even did a victory dance which he wanted no one to know of. But his body needed improvement as he was no longer his 16-year-old self. His hard-earned toned body and abs was long gone. He remembered how girls would squeal as he sparred with Naruto shirtless. He wondered if Sakura ever fangirled towards him after he returned. He took another shower and changed into his usual genin clothes. Then walked out of the Uchiha district towards Team 7's usual meeting place. He arrived to find Naruto already there. The two boys glared at each other. Somehow he never got over his rivalry with the obnoxious blonde. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he felt as though he was missing something, forgetting something to put it. It was pulling at him, nagging him ever since he'd come back in time. He wondered what it was. He was about to scold Naruto for how annoying his presence was, when an all too familiar voice spoke. "Ohio, Sasuke-kun." The world seemed to stop for a moment for Sasuke. He turned around to meet face to face with her. Her, as in Sakura, Sakura Haruno, his Sakura. Relief flooded his features for a split second before turning back to his nonchalant expression. That's why he felt something was missing. It was Sakura after all, the most annoying person he had ever met. Which meant she clearly occupied a great part of his mind. She was dressed in her usual red kipao dress, green tights and ninja shoes. Her hitai was on top of her head, a style she had grown accustomed to. Her face was bright and young, no traces of tiredness, stress and no blood. Her green eyes twinkled in the way that reminded him of how Itachi described the stars. Her pink hair was still long, since it was only a month before the Chunin exams and they hadn't attended them yet. Her forehead was slightly pronounced more than he had been used to, but all in all, she was still Sakura. The girl he loved the most and the reason why he decided to stay in the past and create a different future. He'd never admit that he loved the girl. He was an Uchiha, but maybe on her he could make an exception. "HN," was all he said. "Is something on my face? You're looking at me weirdly," the pink-haired girl said in her sugar-coated voice as she raised a pink eyebrow. The voice that the Uchiha longed to hear, like he existed in it. Now I'm being like a lovesick schoolboy, the Uchiha thought. "HN. Nothing," he grunted. Sakura gave him a weird look before greeting Naruto happily. He eyed the two of them out of the corner of his eye. He never really noticed how Sakura and Naruto had bonded to become inseparable friends over the years. Sakura was scolding Naruto, calling him an idiot for being too stupid to not be able to go through the basic kata moves. Naruto was whining like a 3-year-old who just lost his crayon. But behind that, he could clearly see the strong friendship the two had. Some would say that Sakura abused Naruto by hitting him or scolding him, but it was actually a way of showing their friendship. Just like how he had pretty much argued with the blonde about everything, but they were still friends, more like brothers. "Oi Sasuke Tem," the Uzumaki boy called over to the blonde. Sasuke snapped out of his reverie and looked at the blonde with the most annoyed look his face could have. "What?" he said in clearly annoyed voice. "You are looking at me and Sakura-chan weirdly. What's wrong? Are you jealous 'cause Sakura-chan talks to me more than you?" he asked and grinned at the last part. "Naruto, you idiot. My heart belongs to Sasuke-kun and Sasuke-kun only," the girl replied confidently as she looked at the Uchiha with soft eyes. "Ah, Sakura-chan. Why do you have to go for the tem?" Naruto complained loudly, but the rest of the conversation drowned out to Sasuke. "My heart belongs to Sasuke-kun and Sasuke-kun only." Despite telling himself countless times that it meant nothing to him, Sasuke could not disagree with the fact that he had missed those words. 16-year-old Sakura no longer spoke those words. He remembered that the last time he had heard those words was when he had left the Hidden Leaf Village. Sakura had confessed that she loved him and was willing to go with him just so he could be happy. Of course, he had rejected her and said thanks for everything before knocking her out and leaving her sleeping on a bench. He had furiously tried to ignore the painful gut-twisting feeling he had felt at the bottom of his stomach as he walked away from what used to be his life. But all was in vain. He endured that pain until the hatred had utterly consumed him. Sasuke Tem. The Uchiha snapped out of his reverie and glared at the blonde. What? He managed to say through clenched teeth as he barely managed to control his anger. You were spacing out a lot. Are you okay? Naruto asked, not bothering to hide his concern. I'm fine, he snapped at the blonde. Naruto inwardly winced at his tone. Okay. If you say so, the blonde muttered lowly, obviously hurt by Sasuke's snappy mood. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sakura glance worriedly at Naruto before looking back to the ground. The mood suddenly became gloomy. He sighed exasperatedly before continuing to glare at an imaginary Madara. As usual, Kakashi had arrived 3 hours later. Ever since the mission to the Land of Waves, Kakashi didn't want his genin to do a mission outside the village. He had gone back to giving them D-rank missions. That afternoon, there were no missions, so he decided to give them a training exercise. He had told Sakura to go through the basic kata moves in Naruto to practice his taijutsu skills with his clone. Currently, he was teaching Sasuke how to better use his Sharingan, though the Uchiha had already mastered the Sharingan and even the Mangekyo Sharingan. But he perfectly played the role of the dumb student. After teaching Sasuke to dodge using his Sharingan, he sat down under a nearby tree to read his novel. After an hour or so, he was disturbed by Sasuke, who was now standing in front of him. What is it, Sasuke? The lone-eyed Junin asked his student. Back in the Land of Waves, you said Sakura has the best chakra control among all of us, right? He said. Kakashi nodded. Why don't you try to teach her genjutsu, since most genjutsu users have precise chakra control, the Uchiha said, his gaze boring into Kakashi's unflinchingly. Kakashi did a double take. Was Sasuke actually concerned about Sakura? Now that was new. I suppose you're right, he drawled out lazily. I'll do just that after I finish my novel, Kakashi replied as he went back to reading his book. You can do that later. She can't spend the entire afternoon session going through the basic kata moves, which wouldn't save her life from an S-rank criminal, the Uchiha male said. It took years of practice to avoid surprise being evident on his features right that very moment. Kakashi blinked lazily before closing his book and pocketing it. Hi, I hear you, Sasuke, the silver-haired Junin said as he stood up. He walked over to Sakura, who was practicing kata moves for the umpteenth time that day. Ohio, Sakura, the Junin greeted. Sakura stopped what she was doing and greeted her sensei back. Since you have the best chakra control, I've decided to teach you a few genjutsus, Kakashi said. Really? That's so cool. Thank you, sensei. Sakura said gleefully. And if you complete every genjutsu I give you, I'll tell you the real secret why I've decided to teach you genjutsu, he finished with twinkle in his eye. Hi, sensei. Sakura replied, determination written in bold letters across her face. From the tree, Sasuke watched as the two conversed about the genjutsu. He couldn't hear what proposal Kakashi had said to Sakura, which got her all hyper, but it was good to see that the lazy Junin was doing something worthwhile than leaving Sakura to fend off on her own. He remembered that in his previous timeline, Kakashi had taught Sakura nothing except the statement about comrades and teamwork. Otherwise, Sakura became what she was because of her own hard work. With that, he left the two and joined Naruto to practice taijutsu with. Practice ended late in the afternoon. Team 7 was fairly exhausted. Kakashi had immediately poofed away after he said that training was over. The three genin sweat dropped anime style at his actions. Sakura-chan, let's go on a date, Naruto said to Sakura gleefully. No thank you, Naruto, the kunoichi replied dismissively. Then she turned to Sasuke. Sasuke-kun, let's go on a date, she said to Sasuke pleadingly. Naruto's face fell. Come on, Sakura-chan. We don't have to bring the Tem along, Naruto complained as he pouted childishly. Let's all go together to Ichiraku's, Sasuke interrupted quickly as he sensed an arising argument. He had forgotten that during their genin days, The two hadn't yet established their best friend relationship, so he decided to fix their friendship now. Better do it now than never. That's a great idea, Tem. Never knew you had it in you, the blonde said as he grinned. Sasuke snorted. Yeah, that's good, Sakura agreed, but inner Sakura was on a rampage. Why that stupid Naruto? Stealing my Sasuke-kun. Shanaru. Team 7 went to Ichiraku's late in the afternoon. They had a quite enjoyable lunch. As much as Sakura hated to admit, Naruto wasn't as annoying as she thought. She thought about the time Sasuke got mad at her because she called Naruto annoying just because he was an orphan. Talk about talking to an orphan about another orphan. Ever since that day, she vowed to never do it again. They bid farewell to Ichiraku and Ayame after paying their bills. They were walking in the streets of Konoha. Why don't you guys come over to my house after dinner and train? I heard the Chunin exams are only a month away, Sasuke said, interrupting the silence. He figured he might extend their teamwork and teach Sakura something to help her during the Chunin exams. Really? That'd be awesome, Naruto said, more of shouted as he punched the air. Sure, Sasuke-kun, Sakura chirped happily. I'll get to show Sasuke-kun the genjutsu I learned today. Shanaru. She thought happily. With that, Team 7 disbanded and everyone headed their own way. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura were at the Uchiha training grounds. They were all dressed in their assorted genin clothes. So let's start with a warm-up exercise before we proceed, Sasuke instructed, HDI serious expression in place. The other two members of Team 7 nodded with the same seriousness. They did 10 laps around the grounds, push-ups, sit-ups and basic kata moves. Naruto, create clones and fight against yourself. Try to see your weaknesses, Sasuke said to the blonde. Hi Sasuke-sensei. The blonde saluted in mock sarcasm before walking away to a secluded part of the grounds. Sasuke watched Naruto's retreating figure. He formed 3 clones and began fighting them. He nodded in satisfaction. He turned to Sakura, who was blushing. His eye twitched in annoyance. This Sakura was still a fangirl and it nagged him to the very end. Guess I'll just have to endure, he thought as he eyed the pink-haired Kunoichi warily. We are going to have a sparring session. You can use both ninjutsu, genjutsu and taijutsu. Begin, he said. In a moment, he was already in front of Sakura with his right hand back. Sakura dodged the flying fist by sheer luck but didn't notice the knee which was making its way towards her stomach. His knee connected to her gut and Sakura winced in pain. He then punched her in the face which sent her flying a few meters away. She landed the ground with a loud thud. Sasuke watched her as she regained her bearings. I'm not playing games, Sakura. Give me everything that you've got, he said as he narrowed his eyes seriously. Sakura coughed a bit and wiped away the blood which was on her split lip. Sasuke-kun is very serious. I'll have to become more serious, she thought as adrenaline rushed in her body. She bolted towards Sasuke and the two became involved in a taijutsu battle. Her taijutsu is worse than Konohamaru's at genin level, he thought as he dodged a poorly aimed punch and kicked her in the stomach. She staggered back a little and threw another punch which Sasuke let connect to his face. It was too weak to injure someone but he could still sense the brute strength behind that punch. He jumped back and went through a series of hand signs. Fire element. Grand fireball technique. He shouted as a big fireball erupted from his mouth towards Sakura. Sakura was too slow to react and was engulfed in the bright flame. He narrowed his eyes as he surveyed the area. A cloud of smoke was blocking his view. The smoke cleared and Sasuke found Sakura sprawled on the ground, covered in soot. Sasuke frowned. She was supposed to have dodged that. He walked over to Sakura. Just as he was about to pick her up, she poofed and was replaced by a log. Kawarimi, Sasuke thought. At that very moment, his ears tingled and he turned around to block Sakura's kick. Sakura frowned as Sasuke blocked her kick. She jumped back few meters away. I almost had him, she thought disappointedly. That caught me by surprise, Sasuke commented with a hint of pride. Sakura smirked. Underestimation is one of my best strengths. It's easy for me to catch an enemy by surprise because I'm underestimated, she pointed out. The Uchiha replied. Shall we proceed? She asked. He nodded. Sakura jumped and threw a fist at him. He dodged and punched her in the gut, which sent her crashing into a nearby tree. He walked over to the tree but saw no one. Sakura, he asked himself. Suddenly, a circle of leaves began to spin around him, but died as soon as it came. Sasuke-kun, a voice from behind said. He spun around and met face to face with a dying Sakura who was kneeling on the ground. Sakura, he cried as he ran over to her. I'm sorry, for being so reckless. She croaked and coughed up blood. A large hole was in her chest. She looked down then up at him. You killed me, she said as tears of blood ran down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Sasuke said as fought back the tears. You took my life away from me. That's what all of you Uchihas are, she spat icily. You're a murderer. Firstly, you kill your brother then me. What's more left? She said as tears continued to slide down her face. No, I'm not a murderer. I'm sorry. Please, I'm really sorry, he screamed frantically as tears now cascaded down his cheeks. I hate you Sasuke Uchiha. I hate you and I really mean it, she spat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He chanted the words like it were a mantra. Slowly his consciousness began to slip. The last thing he heard was, Kai. And shouts of concern before everything went black. I hate you Sasuke Uchiha. I hate you and I really mean it. Sasuke woke up with a start. He was breathing heavily and his clothes clung to his skin. Sasuke. He heard two voices exclaim. He rose to sit upright and saw Naruto and Sakura sitting on either sides of the bed, looking at him worriedly. Sasuke-kun, are you okay? The pink-haired girl asked, concern clearly evident in her voice. I'm fine, the Uchiha replied as he massaged his temples. What happened? One moment you were practicing, then you screaming and shouting before you passed out, Naruto explained. Is it because of the genjutsu I cast on you? Sakura asked worriedly. You cast a genjutsu on me? Sasuke asked as he abruptly stopped massaging his temples. She nodded. I used the demonic illusion. Hell viewing technique, she said. What's that? The blonde curiously. It's a genjutsu which causes the target to see a horrifying vision. At first you're encircled by spinning leaves. After that, the vision begins to take place. The user doesn't control what you eat, it's simply about the target's worst nightmares, she explained. Whoa, that's so cool. Naruto exclaimed loudly. But Sasuke, Naruto trailed. What did you see? Sakura asked. Sasuke looked away to face the wall. Could you please leave? Sasuke said. I'm sorry Sasuke-kun. I didn't mean to, but she was cut short by Naruto who placed a warm hand on her shoulder. Sakura turned to look at Naruto who shook his head sadly. Okay. I'll see you later, Sakura said sadly as she and Naruto stood up. They walked towards the door but Sakura stopped midway to look at Sasuke who was still facing the wall. She sighed before she went out of the room. Sasuke released a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Sakura had put him under a genjutsu. Though he was slightly mad at her for doing so, he knew it wasn't the girl's fault. It was his fault for not detecting the genjutsu early enough. Besides, he had underestimated her. She had clearly stated that she was used to being underestimated, hence could easily catch her enemies by surprise. He was one of the unlucky. All he needed now was to relax and clear his mind of the vision. He leaned back in his bed and let sleep wash over him. Sakura was walking back to her house. Her mind was occupied with thoughts of Sasuke. She felt extremely guilty that she had used such a genjutsu on him. It was one of the few that Kakashi had taught. She remembered after completing all the genjutsus, Kakashi had told her the reason why he decided to teach her genjutsu. Sasuke had asked him to teach her genjutsu. She was shocked. Sasuke was actually thinking about her. He was concerned on how well she would fare in battle. She was delighted and was determined to show him what she had learned. After all, he was the reason why Kakashi decided to teach her genjutsu. Sakura sighed in exasperation as she stopped in the middle of the road. "What's wrong, Sakura-chan?" Naruto asked as he halted as well. Sakura had almost forgotten that she was walking with Naruto. "Oh, sorry, Naruto. My mind's just a little preoccupied," Sakura said with a weak smile. "It's about Sasuke, isn't it?" the blonde said. "Don't worry. He's going to be alright," he assured. "I know. It's just that I feel really bad. I didn't want to hurt him," the kunoichi said sadly. "Don't worry. He'll pull through, Dadbayo," Naruto repeated with a thumbs up. "The big question is, what did he see?" Sakura said as they continued walking. "That's a personal issue Sasuke is gonna share with us if he wants to," the blonde genin replied. "Thanks, Naruto. It was nice talking to you," Sakura said with a smile. Naruto grinned ear to ear as he blushed heavily. "No problem, Sakura-chan," he replied. They walked a few meters before meeting with Hinata. "Oh hey Hinata," Sakura greeted the Hyuga heiress. "Hey Hinata," Naruto greeted. "He Sakura-chan, and Naruto-kun," the blue-haired girl stuttered with her face beet red, being in such close proximity with her crush. "What are you doing here?" Sakura asked. "IW wanted to buy some kunai and shuriken but I lost my money so I'm searching for it," the girl replied. "Why don't you use your Byakugan?" Sakura asked. "I don't think it's wise to activate my Byakugan amidst the civilians. I don't want to start a fuss," the Byakugan user replied. "Oh," the pink-haired girl said in understanding. "Don't worry Hinata. I'll help you search for it, Dadbayo," Naruto exclaimed as he gave her a thumbs up. "Why you don't have to trouble yourself and Naruto-kun," the girl stuttered. "There's no harm in helping a friend," the blonde said as he waved his hand. "Multi-shadow clone jutsu," he shouted as he went through the hand sign. 50 grinning Narutos poofed in existence. "Okay guys. I want you to search for Hinata's money." "You got it," Naruto commanded. "Yes boss." They all replied in unison. "How much is it?" Naruto asked. "About 1,000 ryos," the girl replied on the verge of fainting. "Search for 1,000 ryos." The original Naruto shouted. "We got it boss, Dadbayo." The clones shouted back before running all over the place, searching the ground for the money. "That's my call to go," the blonde said as he turned to Sakura. "Don't worry, he'll be fine. He's the Tem after all," he reassured her. "Thanks Naruto. Good night," she said. After waving goodbye to Naruto and Hinata, the Uzumaki boy sped away with the almost fainting Hinata. Sakura chuckled quietly to herself before continuing her journey home. Her mind was still occupied even as she arrived home and went up to bed. Why did Sasuke call out her name? Team 7 met on the usual bridge in the wee hours of the morning, even though Kakashi had still 4 hours to arrive. "Ohio Sasuke-kun," Sakura greeted. "HN," the Uchiha replied. "Are you okay from yesterday's training?" Sakura asked as she looked at him worriedly. "I'm fine. Just forget it ever happened," he said. Sakura nodded unsurely. "You better make sure you don't do that again, Tem. Sakura-chan was very worried yesterday," Naruto complained as he pointed an accusing finger at Sasuke. "You know Dobi, you could do a really good job of shutting up," Sasuke snapped. "Who are you calling Dobi?" Naruto asked, already preparing for a verbal fight. Sakura looked away from her two bickering. "Hey guys," Kakashi greeted lazily as he dropped to the ground. "You're late," Sakura and Naruto shouted at their Junin-sensei. "I met an old lady who couldn't carry her wood so I had to help her carry it all the way to her house near the Hokage mountain," he explained. "Liar," the two shouted. Even Sasuke was clearly annoyed. Old habits die hard, the raven-haired boy thought. So I came here to tell you of the upcoming Chunin exams, Kakashi announced. Chunin exams. I was wondering when they were gonna start, Naruto said as he grinned. Chunin exams, Sakura muttered under her breath. Sasuke looked at her questioningly before turning back to Kakashi. Now I've signed up all of you, so you're to submit your forms later this afternoon, okay? The lazy Junin said. They all nodded. They are starting in a few days, he said. They all nodded in understanding. Okay then, bye. And he poofed away. Typical Kakashi, they all thought. Are we still meeting for training at your house? Sakura asked Sasuke. He nodded. They had been holding training sessions late at night for the past month. Sakura had improved in her taijutsu, though it still needed polishing, and she was a master of genin-level genjutsu. Naruto had improved in his accuracy with weapons. And Sasuke was perfecting his master plan. See you later then, Naruto said as he looked like he was about to go somewhere urgently. Where are you going? Sakura asked curiously. Oh, I'm helping Hinata train in stamina and endurance, he replied as he scratched his cheek nervously. Sakura smiled. Have a great session then, she said. With that, he sprinted off towards the training grounds. It was good to see Naruto notice Hinata. Goodbye Sasuke-kun, Sakura said. She didn't bother to ask Sasuke for a date. She has stopped that when Sasuke started to help her train. There was no point in trying to ruin their relationship because of her fangirl tendencies. He said before turning to walk towards his home. She stared at his retreating figure for a while before heading towards her own home. The events had played themselves out as before. A few days before the Chunin exams, Team 7 had met the Sand siblings. Konohamaru had been the one who had bumped into Kankuro. Then Naruto and Sakura followed and the insulting began. Sasuke had arrived shortly after Gaara had entered the scene. He eyed the Jinchuriki with calculative eyes. He remembered that from the previous timeline, Gaara had been a bloodthirsty maniac who practically lived off bloodlust. If the events were going to play themselves as before, then he best leave the job of repenting the one-tailed Jinchuriki to Naruto. After introducing himself as Sasuke Uchiha, the Sand siblings left. Geez, that guy is creepy. He has no eyebrows, Naruto said as he gnashed his teeth sarcastically. Baka, Sakura said as she smacked the dobi on top of his head. Naruto pouted. That guy is very powerful, Sasuke said in his usual nonchalant voice. He decided against revealing the truth to them that he was a Jinchuriki, but it wouldn't hurt to give them a heads up. Be careful, he concluded. Both members of Team 7 looked at Sasuke as if he had grown a second head, confused as to why Sasuke knew that much about foreign shinobi. They nodded in understanding, still puzzled. The day of the Chunin exams had finally arrived. Team 7 met at the place where the exams were taking place. Everyone was dressed the same except Sakura no longer wore her kippou dress with short sleeves but with no sleeves. They arrived at the building to find a crowd just outside the floor they were supposed to be in. Come on guys, let's hurry up if we wanna get a place inside. Naruto shouted as he jumped up and down. Quiet down Dobi, Sasuke chastised the blonde with his usual cold voice. Let's go to the next floor, he said as he remembered that it was a genjutsu. Naruto tried to protest but was shut up with a big smack to the side of his head from Sakura. The three genin went to the next floor where they found that there were two Chunin guarding the door. Looks like you guys figured it out, one of them said as he opened the door for them. They entered and found many genin already inside. They walked to a free spot in a random corner. There are a lot of genin here, Sakura commented as she looked. Some of them look really powerful, Naruto added. But that's the best part cause I get to kick their butts, Dadbeo. He said as he punched the air. Naruto, quiet down. You're making noise, the pink-haired Kunoichi said. Naruto grinned in return. Sasuke-kun. A screech interrupted them and a purple blue latched itself onto Sasuke from behind. Sasuke-kun, I missed you so much, Ino cooed into a disgusted Sasuke's ear. Ino pig, get off Sasuke-kun. Sakura screeched at the blonde kunoichi. Shut up forehead girl, I wasn't talking to you, the said kunoichi snapped at Sakura. Sakura fought to keep her anger in control. She didn't want to start acting like a fangirl in front of Sasuke. But Ino was getting on her nerves. I see you guys made it, a lazy voice drawled behind them. They turned to see Shikamaru and Choji, who had been looking for their teammate. Oi Shikamaru, Choji, you guys made it, Naruto exclaimed happily. Yeah, spotted the genjutsu on the first floor, the Nara heir drawled out. I bet Sakura saw nothing at all, Ino taunted the female member of Team 7. Actually, Sakura's got the best analytical skills among all of us, which might even surpass my Sharingan. I'm sure she might have seen it before the Dobi and I saw it, Sasuke replied the blonde kunoichi. Ino's jaw dropped as her mind frantically tried to process what Sasuke had just said. Sasuke looked at a baffled Sakura by the corner of his eye. He smirked inwardly. Tem's right. Sakura's the smartest genin, Dadbao. Naruto exclaimed loudly. Sakura swallowed hard. Sasuke had commented. Her mind began to swirl at the thought. Don't faint in front of Sasuke-kun after he just commented you. Shanaru. Inner Sakura yelled. Sakura nodded inwardly. Thanks Sasuke-kun, Sakura said with a genuine smile. He said as he looked away, feeling heat rush up to his ears. Thank God his long hair covered his ears otherwise. Team 8 entered the scene and the rookie 9 conversed with each other. Kabuto then arrived and the Uchiha eyed the shinobi dangerously. It was unknown to all of them that he was a traitor. The medic nin had experimented on Sasuke's body and he felt disgusted by it. Kabuto offered them information on other genin and Rookie 9 had listened intently to what he was saying. Sasuke fought the urge to roll his eyes. Was he really that stupid to believe Kabuto in the previous timeline? After Kabuto left, Team Guy arrived with Lee challenging Sasuke to a battle and confessing his feelings to Sakura. Sakura had politely declined the bushy-browed genin whereas Sasuke didn't even bother to acknowledge him. What would he gain anyway? Then they went to the first exam, which was a written exam. While the others looked intimidated, Sasuke looked boredly at Ibiki Morino. His threats were all dog whistles. Then they sat down. From his seat, Sasuke could clearly see Naruto and Sakura. Sakura seemed to have no problem with the exam, considering she was a paper ninja. Naruto looked like he was about to wet his pants. Majority, if not all of the genin cheated and Sasuke commented on how each of them had cheated quite intelligently, though a few had been caught and were thrown out of the exam. At the 10th question, Ibiki told everyone that those who felt couldn't answer the question were free to drop out of the exams. Some genin left and 26 teams were left. Then Ibiki announced that they all passed and went on to explain how. Sasuke had been thinking of the loopholes on his master plan during the entire time. Anko had arrived with her grand opening. The 26 genin teams had left for the Forest of Death with Anko. As Ibiki collected Sasuke's exam paper, he saw that he had drawn Ibiki in a polka dot two-piece bikini and wrote at the bottom, "You and your exam both suck." Ibiki stared hard at the paper in his hand before shouting, "Uchiha!" whilst crushing the paper in his hand. From where he was, Sasuke smirked. All right everyone. This exam is a survival exam. Each team is going to be given either a heaven or earth scroll. There are 13 heaven scrolls and 13 earth scrolls. You have to reach the tower in 5 days, Anko explained. Every team has to have both the heaven and earth scroll. That means only 13 teams can pass. Is that understood? She asked as she looked at them hard. They all nodded in agreement. The rules for this exam, well, let's just say don't die. It's either do or die, she said. Before you go, I need you to sign these, she said as papers were passed out among them. What is this? A random genin shouted. Oh, these are papers which don't hold me responsible if you die, she chirped. Some paled at her words. Now sign them. I'm sure you're all dying to start the exam, she said. As soon as they all finished, the papers were collected. Now that's done. Let the second exam begin, she shouted as she opened the gates of the forest of death. The genin swarmed inside as each team had safely pocketed the scroll. Now let the real action begin, Sasuke thought as he jumped from tree to tree with a firm resolve, both Naruto and Sakura flanking both his sides with determination of being ready to face whatever lay ahead of them. They had been traveling for 2 days now and they hadn't encountered any enemies yet. Sasuke's mind was occupied this entire time. He knew that events were going to play themselves as before. But now that he knew what would happen in the future, would things be the same as before? Would each of his genin friends develop their characters in these Chunin exams? He hoped that they would. A kunai suddenly whizzed past him and Sasuke sidestepped just in time to avoid being hit. All 3 members of Team 7 stopped on the tree branches they were hopping on. A ninja dressed in black appeared and charged towards Naruto. The blonde shinobi created a clone who threw himself at the ninja. The clone slashed a kunai at the black-clad ninja but he turned into black oil. Then the clone vanished. He turned into oil, Naruto whispered at Sasuke. 3 more ninjas appeared and charged at each of the genin. This caused them to split apart. Naruto was fighting one of the ninjas but every time a hit landed on him, he turned into a blackish oil substance then regenerated again. The same applied to the rest of Team 7. It's a genjutsu, Sakura shouted after punching the clone which turned into black oil then reformed. She jumped away from the ninja and stood a good meters away. Kai, she said as she did the Kai sign. The ninjas faded out of existence. Sakura sighed in relief. Naruto and Sasuke joined her. Thanks for releasing the genjutsu, Naruto said to the kunoichi. Sakura nodded. It was the mist servant technique, she said. What's that? Naruto asked. It's a genjutsu which creates clones that phase in and out of the ground as if they were made of blackish oil. When attacked, they can regenerate themselves, she explained. Nasty, the blonde Jinchuriki said as he made a face. What should we do now? She asked. Sasuke was in deep thought. If he remembered clearly, they were supposed to meet Orochimaru first then Dosu and his team. He gritted his teeth at the thought of the snake Sanin. Sasuke-kun, are you okay? Sakura asked concernedly. HN, he replied. Let's move ahead, he ordered. Sakura, scan the area for any genjutsu, Sasuke ordered. The said girl nodded in agreement. They had been traveling for hours but they felt like they were circling around the same place. Sakura closed her eyes in concentration as her senses tried to pick up any hints of a genjutsu in the area. Kai, she said. She opened her eyes to see her 2 teammates looking at her. There was a genjutsu, she reported. Hei's clone technique, she told them. What's that? Naruto asked curiously, though inside he was angry for not knowing a single genjutsu. It makes the target walk around in an eerie zombie march for 5 turns, she said. Enough of the games. Come out, Sasuke shouted to no one in particular. Sasuke gave both of them a sideways glance and the 2 got the message. They all went into battle stances. Sasuke scanned his surroundings and his ears perked. He threw shuriken at a nearby tree and 3 ninjas jumped down from the tree. They were dressed in black cloaks with red clouds on them. He gasped in shock. The Akatsuki, he thought. All of them wore black masks. They drew out their kunai and all 3 of them charged towards the team. Sasuke was the first to react, rushing towards one of the ninjas with his kunai in hand. The 2 met and their kunais clashed loudly. Sasuke threw a fist and the shinobi jumped away. The 2 became involved in a taijutsu battle. Punches and kicks were thrown, with each being defected easily. Sasuke jumped back and went through a series of hand signs. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. He shouted and several small fireballs erupted from his mouth towards the ninja. The ninja dodged by jumping away but didn't notice the shuriken inside the fireballs. The shuriken connected with the ninja's body and he poofed out of existence. Sasuke looked around and saw that he had moved away from his team. Just as he was about to search for them, he heard a voice he hadn't longed to hear. On the other side, Naruto and Sakura were having their own battle. Multiple Naruto clones were fighting the Akatsuki ninja. Each threw a fist or a kick but was easily defeated. Soon enough, all the clones had disappeared with only the original Naruto remaining. He was panting hard. He drew out a kunai and let out a war cry as he charged at the ninja. The ninja took out his own kunai and charged towards the blonde genin. The two kunais clashed loudly as the ninjas fought fiercely. Unfortunately, Naruto had obtained several cuts while the Akatsuki had remained untouched. He gritted his teeth. Why is he impossible to touch? He thought as he received a kick to the gut and crashed into a tree. Sakura was having much difficulty with her enemy. She hadn't improved much in any area except mastering genin level genjutsu. At first, they had been using taijutsu but the Akatsuki ninja had the upper hand. They switched to kenjutsu. They clashed in fighting with kunais and shuriken. She managed to deflect and dodge all the projectiles but not without leaving a scratch or cut. I have to make a plan quickly, she thought as she dodged a kunai and charged towards the ninja. The ninja threw a kick and Sakura barely dodged. She threw a fist of her own and the ninja blocked it by catching it. Sakura tried to release her enclosed fist but the ninja wouldn't let go. He punched her in the face which sent her sprawling to the ground. She remained unmoving on the ground. The ninja walked over to her with his kunai ready and poised to kill her. Sakura watched from her spot in a tree. She had successfully hidden her chakra such that it was almost non-existent. She had to thank Sasuke for teaching her that, though she never had that much chakra in the first place. She watched closely as the ninja, still in her genjutsu, walked over to her with a kunai in hand. She had put a genjutsu on the ninja when she was punched and was set flying a few meters away. She quickly cast a genjutsu and jumped to a nearby tree while it appeared as though she was unconscious on the forest floor. As the ninja neared her, she took several explosive tags from her pouch. Time to get my plan into action, she said to herself. It was the best plan but it was the best she could come up with. The ninja dug the kunai into her chest and genjutsu Sakura bled profusely from the wound. At that moment, the real Sakura lunged towards the ninja from behind and slapped the explosive tags onto his back. Putting chakra to her finger, she touched one of the tags, setting them off. She jumped away from the explosion, hoping to not get injured in the process. Sasuke turned around to meet the man who had told him the truth about the Uchiha massacre. Madara, he all but growled. The Akatsuki clad in the orange mask in a swirl design with a single eyehole stared back at the Uchiha. The eyehole revealed his fully matured Sharingan. Sasuke. What a surprise to meet you. I see you still remember me, the masked ninja said in his deep baritone voice. What do you want? He asked icily. Watch the tone, brat, Madara chastised coldly. I came here to talk, he said as his Sharingan spinner lazily. Let's take this to a more private place, he said, and Sasuke allowed himself to be caught up in a genjutsu. Now speak, the Uchiha genin barked. Let me just see if I can. Madara trailed as he tried to see Sasuke's thoughts. Sasuke activated his Mangekyo Sharingan, preventing the masked ninja from prying into his mind. Mangekyo Sharingan, I see. Guess that will have to wait, he said as he withdrew. What do you want? Sasuke asked again. I came to tell you how your idiotic tendencies threw us 3 years back in the past, Madara snarled. Sasuke just glared at him. If you hadn't intervened in my jutsu, then it wouldn't have happened in the first place, he said. He replied. But I have to thank you though. Because now I know what the future holds and I can alter events to my own benefit, he said. It's as the jutsu says. Events will play themselves out as before, he added with a hidden grin. So it was you who was at the Uchiha Naka shrine, Sasuke said as he remembered the mysterious figure at the Uchiha Naka shrine. Yes, it was me, he confirmed. But you have to know something, Sasuke said tauntingly. And what is that? The Uchiha ancestor asked as he narrowed his eye. I also know what happens in the future and I still have my powers from before. So know that as long as I am here, no plan of yours will ever succeed, Sasuke said, withdrawing from the genjutsu. He looked to see Madara standing a few meters away from him, slightly panting due to having the Mangekyo Sharingan being used on him. Don't ever forget that, he concluded. I guess you're no longer that spoiled Uchiha brat, Madara commented. Until then, he said and used Kamui to go away. Sasuke glared at where Madara had been previously standing before dropping down to his knees, breathing heavily. Using the Mangekyo Sharingan had depleted his chakra levels, considering he was still genin. Sasuke-kun. He turned around to see both Naruto and Sakura running towards him. They beside him in an instant. What happened? Sakura asked, concern evident in her voice. I used my Sharingan to drive away the enemy, he said through gasps of trying to get oxygen. Is that why the ninjas suddenly poofed away? Naruto asked, remembering how close he had been to giving the ninja a nice good uppercut before poofing put of existence. He nodded. Sakura remembered that after setting off the explosive tags, she had moved away from the explosion. The ninja had survived the attack and looked unfazed. She had managed to hold him off before he poofed away. Naruto noticed several second-degree burns on Sakura's arms and legs. Sakura-chan, you got burned. The blonde genin exclaimed concernedly. Don't worry. It's nothing, she said as she waved her hands dismissively. Sasuke looked at the burns. Sure enough, they looked really nasty. The briefest flash of concern crossed his features and was gone as soon as it came. It did not go unnoticed by Naruto. Sasuke struggled to get to stand up. Sakura helped him stand up and slung one of his arms over her shoulder. Thanks, he said. Let's go towards the tower, he said as it was still mid-afternoon. You aren't going anywhere, a voice from behind said. They turned around and met face to face with a female sound ninja. She had a sickly-looking face and a weird smile. She was eyeing Sasuke. And who are you? Sakura spat. I'm your greatest nightmare, she said as she smiled sweetly. Suddenly, Team 7 was hit with a strong wave of killing intent released by the ninja. It took all of Naruto and Sakura's willpower to prevent from trembling. I've never seen such killing intent, Sakura thought as she pulled Sasuke closer to her. Only Sasuke seemed unfazed by the female sound ninja. I'm not gonna get scared because of you, Naruto shouted as he charged towards her. He wasn't gonna lose to a foreign ninja, most of all to a girl. She effortlessly dodged his punch and kicked him from behind. Naruto crashed into a tree. Sakura jumped towards her with her kunai ready and poised. The female ninja took out her own kunai and deflected Sakura's attack. They exchanged kunai blows. The sound of metal clashing against metal echoed loudly in the forest. The female ninja then grabbed Sakura by her hair and hauled her into a tree. She hit the tree with a loud crash and the tree fell down due to the sheer force. Sasuke no longer tolerated watching his team get beaten before him. Even though his chakra reserves had depleted, he still had to fight. Fire style. Grand Fireball Justu. He shouted as he threw the hand signs and a large fireball erupted from his mouth towards the ninja. She didn't even bother moving away from the attack. Team 7 watched as the sizzling sound and smell of burnt flesh filled the area. They looked on to see if she had survived the attack. The female sound ninja was still standing, though her face had been burned off. But behind the face, there was another face with yellow snake eyes and purple markings running down from the eyes and a sickly gray complexion. Naruto and Sakura stared in disbelief as they watches the ninja peel off her skin whilst smirking. Finally, she peeled off the skin revealing another face. Just as Sasuke had expected. Orochimaru. Sasuke watched the snake Sannin as he completely removed the mask to reveal his full face. He had a sick smile on his face. Sasuke Uchiha. What a pleasure to meet you, he slurred. Sasuke only glared at him. Ah, and the Kyuubi vessel, he said in mock surprise as he eyed Naruto. Naruto replied through glaring. Who are you? Sakura asked, clearly annoyed at not being recognized. It was one of the disadvantages of being a member of Team 7. There was the Kyuubi vessel, the last member of the Uchiha clan and the famous copy ninja. She was just a regular kunoichi in this team. I'm Orochimaru and that's all you need to know, he said as he licked his lips. What do you want from us? Sasuke asked in his coldest voice. I have a gift for you, Sasuke, the man-serpent said dryly. Sasuke didn't reply as he launched himself towards the snake Sannin. He threw a kick and Orochimaru deflected it using his elbow. Sasuke threw a fist and he dodged and threw a fist of his own. Sasuke escaped by jumping back before lunging towards the ninja. The two became involved in a deadly taijutsu battle. Sakura and Naruto watched on awe. Who knew Sasuke was this good at taijutsu? His moves were swift, calculated and fluid. Sasuke threw punches and kicks at the Sannin. Orochimaru dodged and deflected all his attacks and countered them with his own. Their figures became blurs as their speeds became too fast for the human eye to comprehend. Sasuke jumped a few meters away from the Sannin after receiving a kick to the gut. He clutched his stomach as he slightly panted. The chakra exhaustion was starting to have effect on his body. I have to admit that your taijutsu skills are far beyond that of a regular Junin, the serpent commented. Sasuke watched the sly snake for his next move. Sakura, we have to protect the Tem. He's tired, Naruto whispered to the pink-haired kunoichi beside him. She nodded. Hey you snake freak, you're forgetting about us, Naruto shouted. Multi-shadow clone jutsu, he shouted and dozens of Naruto clones appeared. He wasn't going to let Sasuke have the spotlight and all the fighting to himself. They gave a war cry and charged towards the ninja. Orochimaru took out a katana and ran to meet the clones. He swept his katana and cut through the clones like he was cutting butter with a hot knife. Loud poofs were heard as the clones disappeared. But they continued to come at him. Hidden shadow snake hands, he said, and a horde of snakes erupted from his right arm. The snakes lunged towards the clones and soon enough, only the original Naruto was remaining. He lunged towards the ninja with a kunai hand and met with him. Orochimaru deflected the attack using his own katana and swung a leg towards Naruto. The blonde genin jumped up to avoid the kick but didn't see the flying fist coming in his direction. It connected with his face and he was sent flying into a nearby tree. He smirked devilishly. Just as he was about to walk towards Sasuke, shuriken were sent flying his way and he jumped back to avoid getting hit. He saw 3 Sakuras glaring at him with a kunai in each hand. Ah, the pink-haired kunoichi. Sakura Haruno, the man-serpent said as he licked his lips. They threw more shuriken and he deflected them using his katana. All 3 of them lunged towards him with a kunai in hand. He ran forward to meet them and they clashed. He dodged and deflected all of their attacks. He slashed his katana towards one of Sakura and she turned into black oil then regenerated again. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes skeptically. He slashed at all of the ninjas and they turned into black oil before regenerating again. Genjutsu ha, he though with a smirk. He jumped away from the Sakuras and did the Kai sign. Kai, he said and the Sakuras disappeared. Quite a clever move from a kunoichi with no special trait except a large forehead, Orochimaru taunted. Sakura's eyebrow twitched in anger at the nasty remark, but she stayed hidden in her hiding spot in a nearby bush. How dare he insult our forehead? Shanaru. Inner Sakura shouted in anger. Sakura went through another set of seals as she cast another genjutsu and walked out of her hiding spot. Who are you really? You aren't even a genin, am I right? Sakura said as she took out a kunai. I see you're very eager to learn about me. I'll tell you a little secret then. I'm Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin, he said. Sakura managed to perfectly hide her shock. This man is part of the legendary Sannin, she thought in shock. She frowned deeply as she readied to attack. I don't care who you are, but I won't let you hurt my teammates, she said with firm resolve and charged towards the ninja. She slashed her kunai at him, but he dodged and slapped the kunai out of her hand before harshly grabbing her throat and releasing the genjutsu she had put. Sakura squirmed as she struggled to get out of his grasp. You think a measly useless genin like you will be able to defeat me? I don't think quite so, he said as he increased the pressure on her throat such that Sakura began to choke due to lack of air. She tried to remove his hands from her neck, but all attempts proved futile. What a waste of a kunoichi, he said before forcefully throwing her into a tree like a piece of trash. And at that moment, he was hit with a sudden killing intent. He turned his attention to the blonde genin who was now covered in a layer of the Kyuubi's orange chakra. His whisker marks become more cleared and his pupils had turned red. His fingers had turned into claws and he was down on all fours. I won't let you trash talk and hurt Sakura-chan anymore, he snarled. No, he wasn't gonna let Orochimaru trash talk Sakura, Sannin or not. Sakura was badly injured and she still had those burns. Sasuke was suffering from chakra exhaustion and his skills weren't enough to stop Orochimaru. He felt growing anger at the snake Sannin who seemed to enjoy hurting his teammates. He had suddenly found himself in dark room with water when Orochimaru had threw him into a tree. The place was unfamiliar and he didn't know what to do. So he walked and walked and walked. But after walking for what felt like hours, Naruto felt like he was doing nothing. Then he found a door and opened. He entered and found himself in a room just like where he had been. What is this place? He said loudly as he walked around. This is your inner conscience, a voice said darkly. Naruto quickly turned around and saw a gigantic cage in front of him. He saw red eyes glowing in the dark cage. Who are you? He asked. I'm the Kyuubi fox. The famous nine-tailed beast Kurama, the voice replied. Naruto blinked puzzledly as the Kyuubi came into full view. It was a huge orange fox with 9 tails swaying behind it. It stared at Naruto with distaste. Hey, you're the reason why everyone in the village hates me. He shouted as he pointed an accusing finger at the fox. Yes, I am. And I hate them too, the fox seethed. I caused the destruction of the village 13 years ago and I took the life of their precious 4th Hokage and his wife, the demon fox narrated as he laughed maniacally. So that's why everyone hates me. I'm the vessel of the demon which killed their Hokage and family, he said sadly in realization. So then I'm gonna become Hokage and protect everyone so that they acknowledge me as a ninja, not as Jinchuriki, he said with firm resolve. You still want to protect that pathetic excuse of a village after all they've done to you? Exclamation mark. The fox barked. Yes. And you're gonna help me protect my friends, the blonde exclaimed as he gave him a thumbs up. No, I will not protect any human. I hate mankind because they are always tossing as tailed beasts like toys, the fox demon barked coldly. I don't want your power. Just a tiny bit. 'Cause if I die, you die as well, Naruto said as he grinned. The Kyuubi glared at him before sighing in defeat. It wouldn't do much good to die when he hadn't gotten his revenge yet. Fine, he said as he allowed a small portion of his chakra to go to the blonde. After Naruto had received chakra from the Kyuubi, he felt more powerful. But the chakra was dark and cold. He felt like he was losing control of himself. Hate, Hate was all he could hear in his head. If you completely give yourself to me, I'll give you power to protect your friends, he heard the Kyuubi's voice in the back of his mind. No, I won't submit to you, he said as he fought to control his consciousness. He grew 3 tails as he was cloaked in Kurama's chakra. Orochimaru stared at the genin as he snarled like a savage beast. I guess this just got interesting then, he said. With a new speed, Naruto charged towards the ninja, his claw outstretched. He swiped his claw at Orochimaru and he was sent crashing into a tree due to the force. Naruto was beside him in a second and punched the ninja in his face. He felt bones break and crack under the force of his punch. Orochimaru was sent flying into several trees. Naruto roared as he glared at the Sannin, who was recollecting his bearings, his conscience slowly slipping away. If I don't take action now, I might delay giving Sasuke the curse mark, he thought as he began formulating a plan. Having to face the 9 tails Jinchuriki was not part of his plan. Asuke had watched the entire time whilst kneeling on the ground. His chakra levels were still low. He watched as Sakura and Naruto were tossed around like rag dolls. He felt growing anger as Orochimaru choked Sakura before throwing her into a tree. This has got to stop now, he thought as he stood. He was hit with a sudden wave of killing intent and it seemed to increase by the second. He saw Naruto lose control of himself as the tailed beast form took control. As he looked closely, he saw that Naruto was struggling to keep himself in control. The Kyuubi was trying to gain control of his body. I have to stop this now, he thought as the bloodlust increased. He looked over to Sakura and saw that she was trembling at seeing Naruto in such a state. It was the first time she had seen him like this. Sasuke jumped over to Naruto and stood in front of him. Naruto snapped out of it. He ordered as he activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and bore into his eyes. Sasuke was standing in a dark room with water reaching up to his ankles. He looked around and saw the Kyuubi caged. In front of the cage was Naruto, who was floating in the air, covered in the Kyuubi's chakra. Uchiha. The Kyuubi snarled venomously. Kyuubi? Sasuke replied as he glared at the demon fox which had ruined his best friend's and rival's childhood. What do you want? But the fox didn't finish his sentence as he noticed the Mangekyo Sharingan. He gasped loudly. You have the Mangekyo Sharingan? He asked, baffled. Yes, the Uchiha stated calmly. But how could you? That's not what I'm here for. I want you to release Naruto now before I use my Mangekyo Sharingan on like a certain Uchiha did, Sasuke said. The Kyuubi immediately thought of the time Madara Uchiha used it on him. He hated it when the Uchihas controlled him for their personal benefit using their famous Sharingans. Release him. Now, he ordered. There was no protesting as the Kyuubi's chakra left Naruto. Oh, and I wouldn't mind you keeping this a secret, Sasuke said as he referred to his Mangekyo Sharingan before leaving Naruto's conscience. The Kyuubi's chakra immediately disappeared around Naruto and the genin fell to the ground unconscious. Sasuke went down on one knee as he struggled to breath. Now his chakra had totally depleted considering he had used his Mangekyo Sharingan for the second time. His chakra levels were still that of a genin. Orochimaru watched in slight awe at the Uchiha. How did he manage to control the Kyuubi? He thought. No one had ever been able to control the Kyuubi unless he had the Mangekyo Sharingan or used the secret sealing abilities of the Uzumaki clan. This boy should be my next vessel. His Sharingan seems to be a rare one, he thought as he stretched his elastic neck and bit Sasuke on the neck. His neck went back to his body. That was my gift to you, Sasuke. Goodbye, he said and poofed away. Sasuke clutched his neck with wide eyes as pain seared throughout his entire body. Getting the curse mark was not part of the plan. His perfectly composed master plan had just gone down the drain. No, no, no. This is bad, he thought as he struggled to endure the pain. It throbbed painfully on his neck. Sasuke-kun. Sakura exclaimed, and she was beside in him a second. Sasuke-kun, are you okay? She asked frantically as Sasuke groaned in pain. He clasped her hand tightly as the pain intensified. Sakura could only watch as her love writhed in pain. Sakura felt tears well up in her eyes as Sasuke continued to writhe in pain. Sasuke-kun, she said concernedly as he held her hand tighter. Then he dropped onto her lap. What did that Orochimaru do to you? She asked herself, fighting back the tears but failing hopelessly. They cascaded down her cheeks like a waterfall. Sasuke was in pain. It was because the curse mark was pulsing painfully on his neck, plus his plan had gone down the drain. Everything that he had spent hours and hours planning over was now nothing. He had spent several days perfecting his master plan that would save the whole world, that would prevent the Fourth Shinobi War. He hadn't planned on getting the curse mark. He continued to struggle as he held Sakura's hand tighter for comfort. Make it stop. He wanted to shout, but the agony was too much that he could only groan and shout in pain. Slowly he felt his consciousness slip. The last thing he heard was a concerned shout of, Sasuke-kun. Before everything went black. Pain. That was all he could feel. And anger. The anger was dark, it wasn't good. He felt something dark pulsing on his neck, the chakra was dark and restrained, fighting to break free. He wanted to open his eyes but he couldn't. Then he heard loud punches and the nauseating sound of beaten flesh. Whoever was beating someone was making him angry. That person deserved to die. Yes, he had to die. He peeled his eyes open to find himself staring at the sky. It was a clear blue, like there was nothing wrong in all the world. He looked to the side and saw Naruto lying unconscious, and then what he might have deemed as his worst nightmare. Sakura was kneeling on the ground covered in dark bruises with her face swollen and bloodied up. She had a bleeding gash on her forehead and a cut on her cheek which was bleeding profusely, plus the second-degree burns she had obtained. Her hair was short, it wasn't spilling over her shoulders as he had gotten used to. It was cut just above the base of her neck. Her clothes battered and bloodied. Team 10 was standing protectively in front of her, each holding a kunai. Lee was lying on his stomach a few feet away. However, he couldn't see anything other than Sakura. He didn't notice how Team 10 stood protectively in front of her or how Lee wanted to run over to protect her but couldn't move a muscle. He didn't even see Team Dosu surrounding the leaf ninja like hungry predators. All he could see was her, Sakura. Seeing her all beaten up like that made something snap inside, the exact same feeling he felt towards Danzo when he discovered that he was the one who ordered the death of his clan. He wanted to kill whoever had done that. He remembered the last moments with her when he was in the future. I'm sorry for being so reckless. No, not this time. He wasn't going to watch her get beaten up before his very eyes. He tried to move but his muscles were stiff and numb. Come on, move. For Sakura, he yelled at himself inwardly. He couldn't even move his lips. He had to get up. Heck, he needed to get up. Flashback. Sakura was standing beside her two teammates as they recovered from their previous match. They were both sprawled out on the backs, panting heavily, dressed in only their ninja pants and sandals. Sakura towered over them as she pondered whether or not to heal them. She had clearly warned them not to destroy the training grounds since they had made a bet on who had the greatest taijutsu skills between the two of them. Their simple taijutsu match had turned into a deadly battle of ninjutsu and kenjutsu. As such, they had destroyed the training grounds and Sakura used an earth-based jutsu to recreate the grounds. She sometimes wondered how they continued their childish rivalry when they now 16-year-olds. She was surprised that they went along this well since Sasuke had come back. It had only been a month since he came back, but it felt like he had never left. It was perfect, she thought. Everything was just the way they all wanted it to be. Teammates. Nothing more, nothing less. Except that her stupid heart had audacity to go on a rampage when she saw him or when they connected eyes or when he said her name. I told you guys not to go far with your match, she scolded with a frown. You practically destroyed the entire area, she added. Nay. Sorry Sakura-chan. I was just trying to prove a point to Sasuke-tem, Dadbao, Naruto said with a cheeky grin. Sasuke snorted. What's that you bastard? Are you saying I didn't drag your sorry Uchiha ass through the mud when I beat you? The blonde half shouted. You didn't drag anyone through the mud. You just showed how small your pea-sized brain really is, the Uchiha shrugged. Well then let's have another match. He was cut short with a kick from Sakura which sent him flying a few feet away. Don't you ever learn, you baka? She seethed, her face red with anger. How could he just ignore what he had done with his teammate? They had destroyed the entire training grounds. Sakura-chan, why are you hitting me? You're supposed to be healing me. The blonde Jinchuriki whined. Heal yourself. Or maybe ask the Kyuubi to heal you. He's the one who should have the energy to heal a baka like you, she said through clenched teeth. Naruto all but pouted. Nay. What about the tem? Naruto asked as he rose into a sitting position. She held her chin in deep thought as she debated whether or not to heal him. Sasuke-kun is strong enough to heal himself. He's Sasuke Uchiha after all, she said with a small smile at the last part. The rest of Naruto's whines drowned out to Sasuke as Sakura's words played in his mind. Sasuke-kun is strong enough to heal himself. He's Sasuke Uchiha after all. End of flashback. Sasuke-kun is strong enough to heal himself. He's Sasuke Uchiha after all. He's Sasuke Uchiha after all. He was Sasuke Uchiha after all. The man who had managed to live most of his life in isolation with no one but himself, the man who thought he had nothing when he had everything, who felt that he was a monster but still had people who loved him like crazy, who unintentionally killed his beloved brother and the girl he loved the most and had gone back in time to save the world. With a firm resolve, ignoring the burning sensation on his neck and the curse marks which were starting to spread all over his body, Sasuke slowly struggled onto his feet. He staggered towards the battlefield. Sasuke-kun! Sakura exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. How are you feeling? The pink kid asked. Sasuke, choosing to ignore her, asked, Sakura, who did this to you? Sakura looked at him in confusion. Who did what? She whispered, sensing the killing intent coming from Sasuke. Who beat you to a bloody pulp? He barked. Sakura could only look in fear. Sasuke-kun, she whispered. I said who the hell did that to you? He shouted. Sakura cringed outwardly. She had never seen the Uchiha prodigy lose his cool, not even once. Even Team 10 and Lee seemed to be surprised by his sudden outburst. I did. Sasuke turned his head to look at Zaku. It's that bastard, he thought. He smirked. So it's you, he said. He continued to smirk wickedly. Zaku nodded his head arrogantly. Let's see what you can do, Uchiha, the sound him thought. Sasuke didn't need to say anything as the black flame-like marks started to spread all over his body rapidly. He was behind Zaku in an instant. He grabbed his hands and harshly pulled them back like he was pulling elastic, snapping both arms in the process. The sound genin yelled out loud in pain. Sasuke ruthlessly kicked his back. Zaku found himself flying towards a tree. Before he hit the tree, Sasuke was already in front of him and punched him square in the face. He sent the genin flying through the air a couple of meters away. He looked on at Team Dosu's shocked faces with a typical Uchiha smirk. I have so much power, he said to himself out loud as he laughed maniacally. He glared at Zaku. I'm going to use it to kill you for hurting the person I love the most, he said, body trembling slightly with rage, and started walking towards him. He caught a glimpse of Sakura's fear-stricken face and the Leaf Ninja's shocked expressions. He chose to ignore them. He slowly made his towards the sound genin. Kill, kill, kill. was all he could hear. He has to die. He doesn't deserve to hurt Sakura, the voice whispered menacingly. Sasuke found himself quickly agreeing with the voice. Just as he was a few meters away from Zaku, he felt arms circle themselves around him and suddenly time seemed to stop. Stop. Please. Just stop, Sasuke-kun. He could feel Sakura's tears wetting his shirt as she hugged him tighter. Her sobs were the only sound he could hear. The wind blew softly as leaves danced around them. As though some magic spell had been cast on him, Sasuke felt the curse marks subsiding, leaving his skin clear and free of them. He felt strangely at peace. Like as though a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. His body released the tension he hadn't realized he had. Sakura was still crying into his shoulder. I'm sorry. Please don't cry, he wanted to say to her, but his Uchiha ego kept him from saying anything. He had already said some very dangerous words. I'm going to kill you for hurting the person I love the most. Sasuke slowly eased her arms away from him. Sakura removed them without a hint of protest, sniffing. He turned around to look at Sakura, who was looking at the ground, face red, puffy and swollen from crying and fighting. He fought back the urge to hug her and make her forget all this ever happened. She was too innocent for this. Let's make a deal, Dosu said, breaking the silence that had dawned upon them. We'll give you our scroll and you can let us go alive, he suggested. The Uchiha prodigy replied, glaring at the sound ninja. Dosu tossed him a scroll before throwing Zaku over his back and jumping away along with their female member. Sasuke looked at the retreating ninjas. His mind was stressing over how to fix his mistake of getting the curse mark. Sasuke was standing beside his team, who were flanking both his sides. Team 10, Team 8, Team Guy and the Sand siblings among others were there. He also noticed Team Dosu was there as well. Zaku had both of his arms bandaged and in slings. They had arrived a day before the deadline. The team had a day's rest before the third exam. He collapsed as soon as they had entered the tower, physical and chakra exhaustion taking a heavy toll on his body. He already knew what was going to happen anyways, so he didn't care. After their fight with Team Dosu, he had been very quiet, not wanting to answer any questions on his behavior during their last fight. Team Guy had joined him shortly afterwards and Naruto woke up. He complained loudly why he had not been able to participate in the fight against Team Dosu, and Sakura shut him up with a bonk on top of his head. The blonde had asked Sakura why she had cut her hair and she explained that she had wanted a change. Of course, Sasuke knew she had cut her hair to free herself. As they traveled silently through the forest, he pondered whether or not to inform the Junin about Orochimaru. Of course, he didn't want anyone to die, but he didn't want to interfere much in this time. At least not yet, he thought. He didn't miss the occasional glances Sakura sent his way, and Sasuke couldn't blame her for doing so. He had put up quite a show at their last fight. He had unceremoniously confessed that he considered Sakura dear, not that he loved her, he told himself repeatedly, and had taken Sakura's beating rather too bad. They hadn't said a word to each other and he silently thanked her for that. He wasn't in the mood to chit-chat. He didn't bother to listen to the Junin who was explaining the rules of the third exam. He was going to fight Zaku anyways, so pressure zero. He cast a sideways glance at Sakura, who seemed to be listening attentively. He looked at Naruto, who seemed to be bubbling with excitement. Typical Naruto, he thought. He glanced at the one-tailed Jinchuriki. He had to make sure that he didn't lose control before the final exam, and at the same time, he had to give the leaf a heads up on Gaara's condition without raising any suspicions. With that thought in mind, he looked at the Junins and Hokage in front of him. Hayate continued to explain the third stage. Since you're 20, you'll be paired up against each other so that we have 10 people for the final exam. The one who wins will move on to the third exam, he explained, coughing every now and then. Do I make myself clear? he asked as he wheezed again. All the genin nodded. As the matches were about to be announced, Sakura walked to Sasuke. Are you sure that you can fight with the curse mark? She asked concernedly. He unconsciously brought his hand to his neck. Yes, he snapped. He didn't want her to act like a mother hen protecting her chicks. But it's hurting you. We have to tell the proctors, she pleaded. He shook his head no. I heard you last night, she said in a very low voice. The previous night he had been screaming in their room, since they shared the same room. Naruto was dead to the world as Sasuke tried to endure the pain. He didn't remember the curse mark being this painful. The snake bastard must have changed it, he had thought as he groaned in pain. He could use the Susanoo to destroy it, but he couldn't activate it now. The Junins would immediately come to his room when they sensed a strong chakra signature, and he didn't need that. Sakura, who was a light sleeper, had heard his cries of pain but decided that she would confront him the following day. Her heart ached when she heard him groan in pain, but she knew that if she woke up, he would probably snap at her and she'd go to bed in a very sullen mood. Though he's been treating me better she had thought. A month ago, Sasuke had started acting weird, especially around her. He didn't snap at her as much as he used to. He would comment her more often and sometimes smile at her, like a real smile. She remembered when she managed to break out of his genjutsu cast by his surprisingly fully matured Sharingan. She had jumped on him and gave him a hug that would put a mama bear to shame. Realizing her fangirl-like actions, she jumped away from him like he was death himself. She thought she hallucinated when she caught a grimace on his face. I'm so sorry, she had blurted, her face red in embarrassment. He had replied with a small smile on his face. She didn't want to think there was something more than just a smile. I'm fine, he growled again as he grabbed her hand, which was reaching towards him in a pleading manner. Sasuke-kun, if you enter those exams like that, I'll tell the proctors myself, she said in a warning tone, determination setting her eyes ablaze in a way he enjoyed but never admitted to himself. Sasuke almost sighed in exasperation. Kakashi had told him the same thing, or was going to anyways. If you trust me and are truly my friend and teammate, you wouldn't do that, he told her, his eyes boring into hers unflinchingly. She ignored the pang of pain that settled in her chest when he said those words. Truly my friend and teammate. Nothing more, nothing less, she thought disappointedly, silently praying that her eyes didn't reveal how she was feeling right now. She hoped that somehow by putting her fangirl tendencies aside, maybe he would notice her. Even though she acted casual around, her feelings had never died. Because she was the headstrong Sakura Haruno and her feelings never died that easily. Okay, she replied resignedly. But if things get worse, she added, her lips set in a firm line. Sasuke nodded. The first match was Sasuke against Yoroi Akato, a teammate of Kabuto. He remembered that the genin had prowess of stealing people's chakra. Wanting to finish the match as quick as possible, he had dodged and evaded the genin skillfully a few times before using his lion combo, knocking Yoroi unconscious, and declared the winner of the match. Kakashi took him away to seal the curse mark. Kakashi was standing behind the kneeling Uchiha. He was only clad in his shorts. The rest of the clothing had been removed. The silver-haired Junin slowly studied the mark. It had 3 black tomo-like marks arranged in a circular manner and red crosshairs in the middle. It was nothing he had ever seen. Anko's had the usual 3 black tomos only. It fed on the user's negative emotions, causing psychological imbalance and rages. Usually, chakra would activate it, but it seemed as though Sasuke's was already activated. Going down the memory lane, he tries a few sealing jutsus and none seemed to work. It was at his 7th attempt that he heard a low grunt. Sasuke was breathing heavily, with perspiration covering his entire being. If you're not gonna seal the damn mark, you might as well let me go, cause it's getting worse by the second, the genin all but seethed. It's getting worse. Kakashi asked. The Uchiha fought back a snappy retort of, I just said so. He nodded. It's getting worse every time you try to seal it, he said through clenched teeth, forcefully trying not to sound too pained. Ah, Gomen, the lazy-eyed Junin drawled. Kakashi was actually surprised that he hadn't made a single sound of protest. His endurance really surprised him, considering the amount pain the Uchiha was going through and trying not to look and sound like it. He was just about to try for the last time when he sensed a sickening chakra enter the room they were in. Out of the shadows emerged one of Konoha's legends and greatest enemy. Kakashi Hatake and Sasuke Uchiha, he said as a way of greeting. Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin, the Junin acknowledged his presence, immediately on guard. He noticed that Sasuke had tensed too, his Sharingan already active. What do you want? Kakashi asked. I just came to see how my Sasuke-kun is doing, the serpent replied in a slithering voice. Sasuke almost gagged. Only Sakura was allowed to call him Sasuke-kun. You won't be able to seal that curse mark if I may say, the Sannin drawled out as he licked his lips, showing his serpentine fangs. Unless maybe you have the Susanoo, which you don't, so I don't know how you'll help poor Sasuke-kun, he added as he smiled sickly. Sasuke gritted his teeth. We know you have genin spies in the exams. We found their bodies with the curse mark, Kakashi said as he readied his lightning cutter. All the genin I currently have under my command are disposable, so that wouldn't be much of a problem, would it now? He said. You will be mine someday, Uchiha Sasuke, he said, and the serpent disappeared in a swirl of leaves. We have to notify the Hokage, Kakashi said as he stretched, already going over the ways to tighten security. Sasuke stood up but started to sway. Kakashi caught him before he had a face plant. Are you okay? The Junin asked, concern evident in his voice. I'm fine. The surly Uchiha snapped. I think you should rest, the Junin told him. No, I want to see the rest of the exams, the boy said as he staggered to the corner where his clothes were. He put on his blue high-collared shirt and arm warmers and proceeded to leave the room. Kakashi followed after him, seeing that he had nothing to do at the moment. He could talk to the Hokage soon after the preliminary rounds. When they arrived, he saw that Sakura and Ino's match had just started. So this is what he wanted to see. He mused as he eyed the Uchiha who was standing between him and Naruto, giving the match his full attention. My students have truly grown, he thought as he chuckled quietly. I won't lose to you, Sakura, Ino said as she pointed tauntingly at the Haruno girl. Neither will I. I have been training for this moment for a long time, so you better give me all the best you've got, the Pinkett replied in the same manner. They had a face-off before the two girls rushed towards each other. Sakura pulled out a kunai and threw it at the Yamanaka heiress. The blonde girl caught it with 2 fingers and threw it back with much applied force. Sakura dodged easily before meeting her rival head-on in a match on taijutsu. Both girls exchanged punches and kicks. I still haven't improved in taijutsu, Sakura thought as she blocked a kick and countered it with her own. Ino jumped back to avoid it but didn't see the punch coming her way. She moved slowly and the punch connected with her face, sending her flying away. Sakura watched as Ino struggled to stand up. Their match had been going on for a long time, with both girls evenly matched in taijutsu. Physical exhaustion was starting to take effect on their bodies, but Sakura stood her ground, refusing to admit to it. Ino stood up and rushed towards the girl. Sakura took out another kunai and jumped towards her. She slashed towards the blonde girl, only to see that the blonde had spun away the last second, cutting her blonde hair in the process. Wah! She thought as she landed on top of the girl's fallen hair. Ino was a few meters ahead of her, smirking. She tried to walk forward but felt her feet remain stuck to the ground. She looked down to see chakra strings attached to her feet. Thinking you're the only one who can cut her hair off. The kunoichi taunted. Sakura narrowed her eyes questioningly. Now, Time for some action, Ino muttered to herself. She put her hands in front of her and formed her clan's signature move. Mind transfer jutsu, she said and immediately dropped to the ground. Several gasps of shock were heard. She didn't just use that, Naruto trailed. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. If he remembered correctly, Sakura was going to break out of that jutsu. But he never watched her match, so he wasn't very sure. That's why he made it a must that he had to watch it this time. He had caught Kakashi's knowing look in his eyes and knew that he had caught on it. He wanted to his pink-haired teammates match. You better not lose to her, he thought. I'm going to make you forfeit the match, Ino said in Sakura's voice. The pink-haired girl started to raise her hand, about to forfeit when she screamed and dropped to the ground. I won't lose to you, pig, she shouted. She continued to struggle in a mental battle. Stop resisting, forehead girl, she screamed. After what seemed like an eternity, the shouts and struggles stopped. Slowly Sakura stood up and stared at Ino, who had started to stir. Several gasps of shock and she broke out of it were heard. Surprised, the pink-haired girl taunted with a smirk. How did you break out of it? The other girl said as she stood up. I have a strong will. And another being inside me. I'm sure you've met inner Sakura, the girl replied with a wicked smile. Ino shuddered visibly as she thought of the fight she had put up with inner Sakura. You're just forehead girl. The only thing that you're good at is having a large forehead and being useless and weak, always having to be saved by Naruto and Sasuke-kun, the blonde replied in the same manner. I'm not weak and useless, Sakura said as she frowned. Realizing she had touched a sore spot, Ino went on. I know about the mission to the Land of Waves. You couldn't even protect Sasuke-kun and let him get stabbed countless times. The only thing that you did was cry over him, as though that could heal or something, the Yamanaka girl. Sakura had stayed silent, only glaring at her feet as she balled her fists that her knuckles turned white. And, just shut up. Ino looked taken back. Shut up, okay. You know nothing about my team or me, so just shut up, the Haruno girl said in a steel voice. For a long time, I looked up to you. I wanted to be you. You were my role model, she said as she raised her head to look into her blue eyes. But I've changed. Team 7 taught the importance of teamwork. They taught me that they would always watch out for me no matter, she continued. They also taught me that I also have to watch for them as well, to look out for them as well, she told the blonde. Naruto taught Nae endurance, to never give up no matter what. Kakashi taught teamwork, that those who don't complete their mission are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. And Sasuke, she paused a bit. He taught me that I'm never alone. Endurance, teamwork, camaraderies, all of that only happens when you have people beside you, she added. Sakura took out her last kunai and pointed it at her childhood rival. I won't look at your back anymore. I'll be your equal, and maybe more than you. So don't underestimate me, she finished with a wicked smile. Ino seemed at loss for words before she found her voice again. I see that billboard brow has changed a little, but it won't be enough to defeat me. As you said yourself, you will always watch my back, the blonde retorted. Sakura smirked. Pumping chakra to her feet, she ran towards the blonde, creating 3 clones in the process. Ino readied herself for attack. She threw the last kunai at Ino and the Yamanaka heiress dodged, the kunai whizzing past her. As soon as she had done that, she felt her ears tingle and turned around to see Sakura's foot flying towards her. But how? Was the only thing she thought as the foot connected with her face. She was sent flying a few meters back and landed on her knees. How did you? She said and broke down into a fit of coughs, some blood seeping through her lips. Kawarimi, the kunoichi replied as she held out her kunai in one finger. You substituted with a kunai? The girl asked disbelievingly. Sakura nodded cheerily. Ino looked at the pink-haired girl before she disappeared before her eyes in a flurry of cherry blossoms before reappearing behind her, with a kunai pressed to her throat. Move or die, she whispered in her ear in a cold voice. Ino, seeing that she had lost, gave in. The winner of this match is Haruno Sakura, Hayate announced. Everyone broke into cheers. Sakura removed her kunai from Ino and stood up. She held out her hand to the Yamanaka heiress. Ino took it begrudgingly and stood up. Thanks for the match, she said. Shut up, the blonde replied in a low voice. Deciding that there was no way Ino would want to talk to her now, she left the sulking girl and made her way towards her team. Congratulations Sakura-chan. You sure kicked that Ino's ass, Dadbeo. Her teammate exclaimed as he enveloped her in a bear hug. Thanks Naruto, the girl replied as she returned the hug. Wow Sakura-chan, you're so nice to hug. The blonde said as he hugged her harder. Pushing him away, Sakura bonked him on top of head, making the blonde fall down in a boneless heap. Baka Naruto. Don't be a pervert, she seethed as she eyed the Jinchuriki who was now seeing ramen bowls swimming on top of his head. Congratulations Sakura. You made us proud, Kakashi said as he gave her an eye smile. Thank you, sensei, she said honestly. How did you switch positions with that kunai? He asked curiously. I had been practicing for some time now. I wanted to change places with something apart from a log, something more like a kunai or shuriken, or even a leaf or pocket of air. It took some time and I haven't perfected it yet. But I knew I had to use in order to finish the match, she explained whilst smiling. That's very brilliant of you. It's similar to the Hiraishin Jutsu created by the Nadaime Hokage which later modified by the Yondaime Hokage, also known as the Yellow Flash. You might as well create your own jutsu similar to that, the Junin said. Really? That's so cool, Naruto exclaimed. Sakura blushed heavily. That was impressive, Sasuke commented as he smiled. Sakura's heart broke into butterflies. Plus, that genjutsu. Smart as well. I'm guessing you created it yourself, he added. Yeah, the one where you turned into cherry blossoms. So typical of you, Sakura-chan, Naruto said eagerly. Thank you, guys, she said smiling as tears glistened in her eyes. She had never, ever gotten this much praise. Thank you so much, she added. No problem Sakura-chan. We're a team after all, Naruto said as he gave her a thumbs up.